Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Peter JT and I'm back here with another video for you guys. So today I'm using my Nikon D3300 to talk about some low light photography. So if you're interested, ready to learn some more, let's get right into it. The first tip doesn't even involve the camera. It's kind of a silly one, but I would say the first tip is just to add more light. Ultimately, your camera's job is to process light and it's gonna work with the light that it gets. If you give it less light, it's just less information that the camera body has to work with to generate the image that you want. So if you can give the camera more light, you're gonna get way better photos, you're gonna have way better control over everything. So when I first got my camera, low light was awesome because I never had the chance to do it until I got a good camera or a DSLR. But it doesn't always make sense. It isn't the best way to do it. You can get some emotional stuff, but usually if you can add light, that's the best way to do it. Use the light to control it instead of trying to use your camera and hoping that your camera can just figure out what you want it to do. So tip number 2 is to make sure that you're shooting in manual mode. And what that's gonna allow you to do is have a nice wide aperture. It's also worth noting that you should have a lens with a wide aperture because like a kit lens that only goes down to 3.5 is really just not ideal for low light. Not to say that you can't use it in low light, not to say that it's bad at low light, but it's not really designed for that. So a lens with a wider aperture is designed for low light. It's supposed to help you when there is not a lot of light. So definitely look into investing in one of those. They're only about $200, $300 for a 50mm 1.8, and you can't really go wrong with that lens. It's a great lens that I think everyone probably has or should have. So tip number 2, shoot in manual, use a wide lens. Tip number 3. For tip number 3, it's really important to just know your camera and how it performs in manual. So ultimately you're taking photos, but you're not taking photos that are done, you're taking photos that you can edit later on. So hopefully you're shooting in RAW and hopefully you're allowing yourself all that extra creative room at the end of the process. But even if you are, it's very important to know what your ISOs look like on your computer. Because sometimes in camera you don't quite see the full detail, you're not quite getting the full image that you need. So I'm gonna go ahead and take some photos at a bunch of different ISOs and show you guys how different ISOs operate and where you can find a sweet spot in there. So the first tool you can work with is a tripod. And what a tripod is gonna allow you to do is keep your camera super still so you can shoot with long exposures, which means shooting with a lower shutter speed of like maybe 1 second, 2 seconds. Sometimes it'll even go up to like 30 seconds if you're doing astrophotography or something that's super dark. So let's talk about that a little bit. So with long exposure, you can add in a lot of different details. You can add in a lot of different things you couldn't have captured. So sometimes it's cool to do with like an ocean where the water is moving constantly, and then after the long exposure, the water comes out kind of flat and eerie looking. But if it's a super still subject like this, you can use it to just get the detail of the subject and not have to worry about your ISO or anything. Just letting your camera have a longer shutter speed gives it more time to let in light, and that gives the camera more to work with. So let's look at what a 1 second exposure looks like. This is a 1/4 second. And just for reference, this is at 1/200th of a second. My last tip for you guys is about using your flash. So we talked about how important it can be to add light, and this is a great portable way to do it using the abilities that your camera already has built in. But you can also be creative with this and figure out new ways to use it. So one way that I've been really enjoying using a flash, and I definitely didn't make it up, I didn't invent it, but I've learned it and I've kind of tried to make it my own, is shooting with a long shutter speed. So right now my camera is set to about 1/3 of a second, my flash is about halfway up, and if you shoot and as this shutter speed is firing, kind of give it one of these, you'll get a cool twist, but the moment the flash fires will really freeze the image. So you'll end up with a blurred around that moment, but the moment the flash fires, you get a still image. It sounds kind of confusing, so let's just see what it looks like. I'll put up a couple examples on screen of what this setup looks like. They all create very unique light trails and they can be very fun to play with. It is very hard to get the shot that you want, but if you're willing to be flexible and willing to put in the time, it definitely can create some cool results. I hope these tips were helpful for learning to work in low light photography. If you have any more questions about it, let me know. This is something that I learned a lot about while working with concerts and shooting concerts, because we don't get to control the lighting director. We don't get to tell them to put on more white light or less of this light or whatever. So you gotta learn to work with what you have. So working on experiments like this or little setups like this in low light is a great way just to learn your camera and learn how everything works. so that when you are in the moment with a low light shoot, you can just nail it and knock it out right away. So hopefully this helps. See you guys next time.